What is up, gamers? FCast and Chill here. Last episode on our Grandmaster series, we finally completed the Theater of Blood Perfect Theater combat achievement, arguably the hardest combat achievement in the game. Today, we're going to actually finally wrap up our Zuckhelm and finish this thing. No, not that Zuckhelm, the real one. There we go. A lot of people have asked me lately what FCast means in my name, FCast and Chill. No, it does not mean fucking can't acquire scythe. No, it doesn't mean fuck combat achievements. It actually just means some nerdy math shit related to my job. It stands for Fellow of the Casualty Actuarial Society. I'm a huge fucking nerd. I took a bunch of math tests, so they gave me some letters to put after my name, and my name means that I got those letters, and basically now I just chill at my job and play Runescape. So that's where it comes from. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and move on to these combat achievements. So the last thing I really needed to do before being able to finish all the combat achievements was learn Theater of Blood hard mode. So hard mode Theater of Blood is pretty similar to the normal Theater of Blood, it's just that it's way more punishing, and there's a few different strategies you need to do for some of the rooms. Luckily, I have a good friend in the clan, Kryge Champ, who's a total fucking Chad, along with Dr. Max, who has a little bit of experience, and they both have scythes, so they're going to help teach me some hard mode Theater of Blood, and hopefully it'll go pretty well. So overall, the rooms aren't too different for the most part. For Maiden, really, it's not that different. It's just that all the crabs will spawn every single time. And anytime if you let crabs through, it'll make Maiden do a lot more damage and attack faster too. So really want to make sure you freeze all the crabs and kill them all off. Other than that, really, you just need to swap the tank out too. So, if she keeps attacking the same person over and over again, then she will also start doing more damage and attacking faster. So you just need to make sure you rotate who's standing closest to her. But other than that, this fight's pretty straightforward. It's not really too bad. And it's more forgiving than you think, even though if you let some crabs in, you're not totally fucked as long as you play pretty cleanly otherwise. The next room is Bloat, and Bloat is actually quite a bit harder. So the main difference with Bloat is instead of only the hands and feet falling during him walking around the room, they do that continuously the entirety of the fight. So even when he goes down, you have to make sure that you're dodging the hands and feet while running to him and while attacking him. The best way to do this is to, when you're just attacking him, is to zoom in pretty close and just stare at the shadow under your feet. And if you see a shadow pop up, then just step out of the way. It is a little bit more nerve-wracking since, if you get stunned by these as he's getting up, you can also get stomped and just die, so just try not to do that. You also get a lot less points at the chest in hard mode Tob, so you have to be a little more careful with your supplies. For the Nilo room, it is really stressful. This is probably the hardest one for learners other than Berserk. And for one thing, during the waves, as you are attacking the crabs, if you attack a crab with the wrong style, it actually reflects damage back onto you. And this can just kill you outright or do a shit ton of damage to you. Also, every 10 waves, a large mini boss crab will spawn in the middle, and you have to deal with that as well. For the Nilo boss itself, as it's doing its attacks, whenever it does a mage attack, if you're not piled up on the same tile, it'll deal a ton of splash damage to everybody. And for the range attack, if you're not at least 3 tiles apart, it'll also deal a ton of damage and bounce between people. So you have to kind of pre-move to anticipate its attacks to know if you need to group up or split apart for the mage and range phases. Again, this just adds another level of stress, and it's another way that learners can essentially wipe a whole hard mode top team here at Nilo, so just try not to do that. Soditseg's not too different. There's 2 large balls that he launches whenever he shoots out his ball, and so usually you stand on either side of the center here and split them. Also, when he does the maze, everybody except one person goes to the Shadow Realm, and you split up the maze. So you can see here I have the second half of the maze, so I just follow Max until where my maze starts, and then I can run the rest successfully. Zarpus, the fight is pretty similar. He does start out splashing poison around the outside edges of the room, so you really want to just melee him instead of ranging him, like you can in normal Theater of Blood. And then during Zarpus's enrage phase at the end, if you attack him while he's looking at you, he will reflect and kill you. And so whenever someone else attacks, Zarpus will turn to face them, So as long as you're attacking on different ticks as your teammates and you set it up properly, you can literally just take your hands off the keyboard and mouse and just chill and watch them die. So not too bad at all. For Verzik, hard mode is pretty challenging. There's a lot to learn. For phase 1, whenever she shoots out her attack and hits one of the pillars, falling rocks will actually come down as well. And so you'll need to alternate running back and forth between the pillars after each attack cycle. Phase 2, whenever she throws her green cabbages out at people, they'll leave behind poison splats. And so you have to use 4 different tiles that you're kind of cycling through instead of just walking back to the same place always. And so you might need to use a stam because you're going to be using a lot more run energy here. But you just need to make sure you stay conscious of those poison splats. For phase 3, she'll alternate tank randomly. After, I think it's 4 attacks, she'll have the chance to change tank. So everyone has to know how to tank Verzik and be ready. Then when she goes down into the enrage phase, also when her health gets down to 5%, she'll heal all the way back up to 30%. And then you'll have to keep fighting her. So the enrage phase is much longer for Verzik P3. Also, the yellows that she puts out during her yellow attack, there's 3 of them that you'll have to stand on for each person. And when tornadoes are following you, this can be pretty challenging. Finally, if you get through all that, then and Verzik is dead, you've completed your hard mode Theater of Blood. And, you know, as a learner, I was struggling with these quite a bit, but we were getting through them and they weren't going too poorly always. You know, I was even getting some death lists occasionally early on. But shout out to Cryogen Max for helping teach me hard mode. And yeah, now we're going to go on to doing some of these hard mode combat achievements because that's really what we're here for. The first hard mode combat achievement we're going to go for is Teamwork Makes the Dream Work. And so what this is essentially during Verzik Phase 3, while the tornadoes are out, everybody needs to hit all 3 of their yellows successfully without getting killed by a tornado. This is, you know, not too bad once you have some experience, but, you know, for my first time, I actually got hit by the tornado right as the 3rd yellow hit me. But it still counted and gave me the combat achievement, so it feels a little cheap there, but I'll take it. This was when I only had a couple kill counts, so pretty early on. Again, shout out to Large Tater here for helping out with some of the early hard mode tobs when I didn't know what I was doing. Next, we decided that I wanted to go for the personal space combat achievement. And so for this one, I actually went with 2 of my friends who also don't have scythes and just wanted to go for the combat achievement as well. So we got through Maiden pretty quickly. You know, shout out again to Ass Captain as well as Poot Boopsy. Great names. So we made it to Bloat, and this combat achievement that we're going for, personal space, the goal is to never stand on the same tile as somebody else while killing Bloat successfully in at least a 3-man. So this is really challenging because just naturally as you go to attack Bloat or as you're running away from him, you know, people are going to want to group up and stand on the same tile typically. You know, if everybody's on the inner ring, you're very likely going to stand on the same tile as people. So what we did to do this combat achievement is we each got one of the rings. So Ass Captain took the inner one, Poot Boopsy took the 2nd ring, and I took the 3rd outer ring. And this was a huge fucking struggle. Most people cheese this combat achievement using Phoenix necklaces and just kind of tanking Bloat, but we wanted to try not to do that. So really I ended up planking a lot here. It took a lot of practice. You can see there were times where I was messing up here, accidentally stepped on Poot's tile, and there were other times where, you know, I would be running on this outside ring and Bloat would turn and I would end up getting flied and getting the whole team flied just because it's really hard when you're on that 3rd ring outside of the center to stay there and not take any flies. So we actually spent a long time, you know, resetting Maiden, coming back into Bloat and dying over and over again, trying to get through this combat achievement. It was much harder than I anticipated when we weren't cheesing it. That said, you know, after lots of deaths and suffering, eventually we got smart, and what I did was I said, okay, well, I'm just going to go into Bloat and mark every single tile on my 3rd ring so that I stop stepping off of it. And we're going to try that. Did that, still was dying some just because it was really hard to deal with the flies. But, you know, it did start going better on average. We were still sending attempts. And after a while, what I ended up doing is I decided, okay, I'm only going to Chally spec when he goes down, and then just like get back to my outside ring so I'm not flying everyone else. You know, being on that third outside ring, I have less time to get away from him after he goes down and attacking him. So just to not wipe the whole team, what I ended up doing is, you know, Bloat would start, he would go down, so I would run in and I would Chally spec him and then just run the fuck away. And so then just get back to my ring. And as long as I did this and I stayed on top of when he was turning, you know, we brought plenty of brews so we could spam click them whenever he would, you know, fly us. We eventually did get a bit more successful at it. So, you know, I was just staying a bit more on top of watching him, had to make sure I kept an eye out for the shadows and falling meat, as well as when he would turn. And after probably about 2 hours of trying to send this combat achievement, which is kind of embarrassing when I say that, we did finally get personal space. And this is my reaction live on stream. Oh, hell yeah, did we get it? Yes. Oh my god. Okay.
So fucking stupid.
Hell yeah. That was awesome. That took way too long. All right. So we did end up getting personal space, and that was a fun one. Probably should have cheesed it with Phoenix necklaces in retrospect, but you know, I think it's fun to try to do some of these as Jagex intended a little bit. For a lot of the other combat achievements, since, you know, my friends that I usually play with don't have scythes, I actually just ended up going into the combat achievement Discord and just asking around for teams. So this is just a Discord where people can get together and look for teams together with other people who want to get the combat achievements. So we ended up using this for most of the hard mode TOB combat achievements. So the next one we're doing is harder mode 1, and this one's actually fairly straightforward. It's just getting a perfect Seg without, you know, splitting the ball. So essentially just the same strat that we were doing for Perfect Theater, just don't mess up and make sure everybody tick eats the ball, no one dies, and you kill them without any mistakes. So we knocked that one out pretty quickly. The next one I wanted to go over is Nilo Sniper. So this one's a little bit harder. You have to make sure you're just killing the Nilos at Verzik essentially, just so that they're not popping on people. Really, it's not too bad as long as everyone's aware and going for it. And here I am back with Z and AP, the Chads who helped me out with Perfect Theater, and we'd ended up knocking this one out fairly quickly. And you know, they're very into hard mode TOB, so I started sending some trios with them pretty regularly just to get some more practice in trios, and it's just nice to get some clean trio hard mode TOB kill count. And there we go with Nilo Sniper, nice and easy. Next is harder mode 3 that we're going to do. This one is killing Verzik in her third phase without anybody using a melee weapon on her. So the way we can do this is actually just equip T-Bow and a Misori for Verzik phase 3, or Shadow and Ancestral, and just run around the room and range or mage her. This means your DPS is much slower than meleeing, so it's a much longer fight. But as long as you know, just make sure that you don't die and bring plenty of brews, you can just go through it and kill her. So yeah, it's not too bad. T-Bow and Misori is probably the way to go here over the Shadow and Ancestral, because your defense will be a lot higher. So then your brews will last longer. But yeah, that's a pretty straightforward one. Next, since I was already sending some trios with Z and AP, we actually decided to go for the 3-man hard mode speed. And again, I don't have a scythe, so this was a little tricky, but you know, these guys are huge gamers, and you know, we just needed a really clean kill count where we got some decent RNG. And the thing about hard mode TOB speeds is that the timer is the entirety of the raid time, not just the time that you're actually in the boss fights. So it's very important to make sure that when one of the fights ends, you immediately run to the next room and start it as soon as possible. So doing that and just not really making many mistakes, just going through pretty cleanly, we actually ended up getting this 3-man speed time, you know, only in a few attempts. It really wasn't too bad at all. Again, huge shout out to these guys. You know, the max gear and scythes definitely helps. But yeah, there's a hard mode 3-man speedrunner time. Nice and easy. Back in the combat achievement Discord, getting some random people to help out with some of these. The next one we're going for is harder mode 2. And so this one is at Zarpus. So what you have to do is let the Exhume tiles heal him up all the way to full. And then once you've done that, then you have to do a perfect Zarpus. So essentially nobody takes any damage and you kill him. The easiest way to do this is actually a strategy where you mark all these tiles in numbered order, as you can see on my screen, and you do 2 blowpipe attacks at each tile, then running to the next one. If everybody's tick perfect and does it in unison, then nobody will take damage from any of the poison splats. And if everybody's range potted up and has their blowpipe and void, then you should be able to get it pretty quickly. Unfortunately, I actually didn't have void when I was doing this, so I was just using Misori, but it still worked out for us. And this one did take a couple tries because there were times where someone was a little bit early or a little bit late and kind of messing it up for the team. And then we'd have to get all the way back to Zarpus. But eventually the group I was running with, we did cut it down to 3 people and we did end up getting it. So there is the harder mode 2, and very nice. We have completed that one as well. Back at the trios with Z and AP again, we're going for Pack Like a Yak this time. So this is completing a hard mode kill count with nobody dying and nobody buying any supplies inside the raid. So you essentially just have to pack your inventory full of brews and bring a stam, just so that you're not going to need to buy anything at the chest and just get through pretty cleanly. Again, this one's pretty challenging because nobody can die in any of the rooms and you need to make sure that you have enough supplies for everything. But, these guys are gamers, like I said before, and I was starting to get more and more experienced at hard mode. So after a little bit, we did successfully get this. I had 4 brews still going into Verzik, which is pretty good if you're going to have a clean Verzik. And we were playing pretty well, and we got through it, and I actually still had a decent amount of supplies left. You can see I almost have 3 full brews there as Verzik died, and there is Pack Like a Yak. So nice and easy. We're really just knocking these out. All we have left for the hard mode Tob combat achievements now is the 4-man and 5-man speed times. This time we're back at hard mode Tob in a 4-man, going for the 4-man speed. So we got ELO Luigi with us. Luigi's actually one of my viewers who decided that he wanted to help out with some of these, and that man is a fucking gamer. Like, dude almost has a complete pet log, which is wild to say on old school RuneScape. But yeah, we got Champ from my clan and Luigi, and then one of Luigi's friends helping out, and we're just kind of going through with a 4-man, and we end up getting a clean kill count, after just a couple tries, and there's the 4-man speed time. Really, these hard mode speed times, like, as long as you have a team where everybody except me has a scythe, and there's not really any deaths, and it's pretty clean, the times just fall pretty easily. It's not bad at all. For the 5-man speed time, I was actually back in the combat achievement Discord sending with randoms, and I thought I felt a little bit like a leech with my Soul Reaper axe. But, we got a good enough team, and it did go pretty well. And, without too many deaths and just going through things smoothly, we did end up getting the 5-man speed time. That one was a bit close, but, I guess that's to be expected when you're going with randoms instead of having an experienced team. But, yeah, worked out. We got all the hard mode Tob combat achievements knocked out here. There is one left, and that's 50 hard mode Tob kill count. But I wanted to save that for after finishing all the normal Tob combat achievements, and we're going to finish up with the 50 hard mode Tob. So we'll get into that soon. At this point, all I needed now was the 50 hard mode Tob kill count, as well as the 2, 3, 4, and 5-man normal Tob speed times to end up getting my Zuck Helm. And I was a little worried about finding teams for the normal Tob times, just because I didn't really have a scythe, and so I would be a leech regardless. Like, I would need a team with people who knew what they were doing and scythes to finish it out for me. I first posted in the combat achievement Discord saying, if I only have a Soul Reaper axe, is it even possible to find teams in here to help out with the normal Tob speeds? And Nick Ince, who I had actually used his Red X guide video for Baba a long time ago, he was there, and he decided to give it an attempt and try to help me out. He did bully me a little bit since I didn't have Void yet, but honestly, that's pretty deserved because I just didn't realize how good Void was at Tob. But, we did end up going for the combat achievement, and I didn't really know what I was doing here at this point. but he took his friend and we just tried zooming and see how it goes. The goal time for the 3-man is 17:30. So overall, we were playing pretty well. It was going pretty smoothly. But unfortunately at Verzik, I am stupid and I didn't realize that you need to summon a melee thrall for P1 instead of a mage thrall. So I got bullied again a little bit, again, deservedly. But yeah, we went through, going through like fairly cleanly. Again, I'm pretty stupid, and right when reds spawn, I click to attack Verzik and do a big ass heal. So that slowed it down a little bit too. Yeah, getting bullied more, but it is what it is. And we finished the time, and unfortunately, we actually were off the speed time by about 12 seconds. So very close, given that I had some decent fuck ups and didn't even have Void. But that was just the one attempt they wanted to send with me, and that was it. So unfortunately didn't get it there. I actually took a quick detour to go to pest control, because even though I had over 1,000 collection log slots, I still hadn't done pest control and didn't have any Void. So I decided to change that after looking at some of the DPS calcs with Void and Blowpipe versus using a Soul Reaper axe. So things like Zarpus, if you actually get him down to 0 defense, Blowpipe and full Void just shreds him. So we really needed that to help out with the speed time. So I spent some time AFKing at pest control and actually did finish my elite Void, finally. So now let's get back into the speeds. Luckily, content creator privilege comes in again, and actually someone messaged me and asked if I had gotten any of those top speeds done and said they'd be willing to help me out. So I actually took him up on this, so huge shout out to Dr. Gaines and his friend Deader. He actually told me that they often do boost people for these combat achievements, so they have a lot of experience sending them. But he said he'd, help me out for free and just kind of send some attempts with me because, just wanted to help out and be a nice guy. So again, huge shout out to Dr. Gaines and Deader. These guys have a lot of Tob experience. I didn't really know what I was doing with some of the speed strats for normal Tob just because I hadn't experienced them before. My plan was to wait until I got a scythe to go for these, but unfortunately, Theater of Blood was just not being nice to me, and even though I was sending endless trios with my buddy Ass Captain, we just couldn't get a scythe. And, we still haven't gotten a scythe to this day, so hopefully anytime soon. But without the scythe, I was going to need an experienced team. And so Dr. Gaines, huge shout out to him. He really helped me out. So the first one that we went for here was Dr. Gaines and Deader helping out with the 3-man time. On our second try here with Dr. Gaines and Deader, we ended up getting a pretty clean Verzik, and we actually beat the time by 30 seconds, which was pretty crazy just given that, I don't even have a scythe. So yeah, smooth sailing there. Then after that, Dr. Gaines and I went for the 2-man time, and this one I thought would be pretty challenging too, because again, I didn't have the scythe that we needed. But overall, it was actually a bit easier than I thought. It did take me a little bit of practice to get down the 2-man Nilos using the range DPS role. I was actually pretty used to doing the melee DPS and maging from all my Tob kill count that I'd done, but I learned the range role, and the duo Nilos actually went better than expected. And for Verzik herself, it was not too bad. You bring Lightbearer to help out with phase 1 just so you get more specs in. And then for phase 2, you just try to get through her as quickly as you can. The reds can be a huge stalling point, but if you can kill the red crabs quickly, then it's not too bad. Unfortunately, we were going pretty smoothly on pace, and then Dr. Gaines just DC'd. He just ended up standing there during the red crabs, and so after a little bit I just said, okay, well, that sucks. I guess we're just giving up on that one. But luckily we went right back in and again got a pretty good pace. We even had a 543 Nilo with the 2-man, which is not bad at all. And we went through and everything was pretty clean, and we ended up beating the 2-man Tob speed time by well over 30 seconds. So nice and easy, not bad at all. And that's that one knocked out. Now we just have the 4- and 5-man times left. So for the 4s and 5s speed times at Taub, usually the strategies are a bit different than the 2s and 3s. So for Maiden, usually we do something called stacking, and that is where you freeze the crabs that spawn at 70 and then just keep DPSing Maiden down to 50, and then those crabs will spawn as well while the others are still frozen. Then you'll just barrage, chin, or den spec them to try to damage all of them as much as possible. This saves time killing the 2 separate waves of crabs versus just, splashing all of them at once. This can take a little bit of practice to get down, but overall it's not really too hard. You just need to have someone bring a den's bulwark and know which tile to stand on to do the den spec once the 50s crabs are frozen. So pretty straightforward once you get it down. Then for Verzik, the strategy is very different. So there's something called God Booking, which is essentially bringing a God book into the Theater of Blood and using the spec before you start the Verzik fight. The interesting thing about the normal Taub speedrun times is actually only the room time matters. The time you spend between the rooms when you're not fighting the bosses doesn't count. So you could take all day if you wanted to, as long as, you actually do the bosses quickly. So what you do before starting Verzik is you have people use their God books to go ahead and use the special attack, and you stagger them by 13 ticks. So you can see I have this tick counter on my screen. And what that does is it makes it so that when you have the Dawnbringer staff and you're using your specs on Verzik, you'll get the extra spec energy back while you're doing your first 2 specs. So you can just launch all 3 of them at a time before dropping. This speeds up phase 1 pretty considerably. People will usually also just camp in front of Verzik to just keep dropping the staff and attacking when you're not speccing. The problem with this is she hits pretty hard, so you gotta spam click brew and just hope she doesn't keep hitting you for back-to-back 60s. But once you get through that, then the next step is to just, try to phase P2 and finish it as quickly as possible once the reds spawn. Ideally you just have to deal with 1 set of red crabs and then you skip the second ones and just hope that the DPS is there. I was going with a team, I had the same guys that I ran Perfect Theater and a lot of the hard mode Taubs with, Z and AP. Unfortunately, though, we couldn't quite get the time. We got very close a few times, and it just wasn't happening. Like this time here, we missed it by, I think, 1.8 seconds, so 3 ticks, unfortunately. But, we just got to keep at it and hope for the best. We also were doing a 2 down on bloat. I know for the 5 speed time, a lot of the time, people will bring Phoenix necklaces and just tank bloat and just keep going. And that can help a lot, but we should be able to get it without the 1 down bloat and just see how it goes. Back at it with Dr. Gaines and Deader, we got some of their friends to help out with the 4s and 5 speed time. They said that they were free and wanted to help me out finish up, so we're back in it. We're doing the 4s first. So the 4s, I think, is a little bit more generous with the amount of wiggle room there is compared to the 5-man time. That said, remember I don't have a scythe, so I am pretty much a leech, so it might not work out too well. But again, in 4s, you also do the same God booking strategy, so you just use your spec here and then wait, and then you start Verzik and just hope for the best. And we actually won and done the 4 speed time, and we beat it by a sizable amount. We got 1440. I believe the time is 15 minutes, so 20 seconds of leeway there. That's not bad at all, especially for not having scythe. So yeah, not bad at all. And then fortunately, they had another friend online, so we got one more guy to join us, and then we started going for the 5-man time. This one took a couple tries because, it was, again, just much tighter without the scythe. Like the time is 14:15 for the 5-man, and so it's very unforgiving. But after a few tries, we had a pretty good bloat. We didn't quite get the 1 down, but close enough. And the other rooms, we were just absolutely zooming. And so when we got to Verzik, we just were pretty confident that if we got some good RNG, it would end it. And when we got to P3 and webs started, we were already down to 20%. So we got her in the enrage phase, like right at the start of webs. And actually she died like right as we were completing our first lap just after. So pretty crazy, really good timing, good RNG. And that is the 5-man speed time. We barely beat it. It was only 6 seconds, but that is it. And so now with that, I only need 50 hard mode Theater of Blood kill count until I have my Zuck helmet. And with that, we've overcome the hardest part in the game for getting Zuck helm, which is of course having friends. So here I am going for my 50th kill count here, and I was actually streaming at the time. A couple of my regular viewers tuned in to come help out. Actually, we got Sufishin as well as Fitzy, and so they're pretty big chads with their scythes, so they're helping out me, Ass Captain, and Vern. So we have 3 non-scythers in this hard mode, which is probably a little sketchy, but should be good enough as long as people play clean. And everyone here really likes clean gameplay, especially Vern. So you watch his maze running technique here, it's immaculate. It happens. At least we didn't die. In his defense, he did say he was lagging. I guess we had picked a bad world for it. We do end up getting to Verzik on that run, and unfortunately, Ass Captain was also saying he was lagging really badly too. And of course, the lagger ends up getting Tank with Verzik P3, and he does actually pass it, which you shouldn't ever really do in hard mode, but I guess if you're lagging terribly, then it's not a terrible idea. But unfortunately, she went right back on him, and so yeah, pretty shitty. And then of course, a very uncharacteristic mistake from Ass Captain from all the lag. He gets all of us meleeed, and that makes it pretty close. Fortunately, we do end up finishing the kill. I run out of supplies though because of some of the unclean stuff going on earlier in the fight, and I end up dying right before Verzik dies. But what better fitting way to finish up my last combat achievement sitting in the cage watching. And there it is, Sufishin and Fitzy do finish it out for us, and that is my 50th kill count, and here's my live reaction. Yeah, you guys got it though. Thanks for the carry. Congrats to GM, yeah. There it is. Sufishin carrying us, yeah. Completed the Grandmaster tier. Hell yeah. Finally did it. That took quite a while, but feels good to be done. So yeah, I fucking did it. I got my Zuck helm. I actually finished all the combat achievements somehow, and I am now a Grandmaster of old school RuneScape. A little surreal and hard to believe since I started this journey, approximately a year ago. I got my T-bow back at the end of 2023 and then played leagues, and yeah, after a year of grinding, TOA and TOB to get better and just doing all the combat achievements, we finally did it, and I finally am a Grandmaster. It feels pretty cathartic to finally accomplish a goal you've been working on for so long. I've learned so much on this journey, having to master every boss in the game. I had never played any form of RuneScape before 2020, and now I've become a Grandmaster on an Ironman account after having to overcome the challenge of going dry on all 3 mega weapons. Nothing in the game says you've mastered old school RuneScape like being able to walk around with the Zuck helmet, and it feels so good to wear and be a part of this elite group. I've played a ton of difficult games in the past, but I really don't think any game has come close to this level of depth or difficulty. The amount of thought and strategy that can go into a simple medieval clicking game continues to astound me, and it's the reason I still love this game. You'd think after finishing the combat achievements that I'd be burned out and need a break, but instead it's just got me excited for the next grinds and challenges that I want to take on. Soon, I plan on making a short video where I'll ramble about what's next for me after the Zuck helm. As always, please like and subscribe if you want to see more content. I really appreciate you all watching. Thanks for all the support over the last year while I've been on this Grandmaster journey, and I hope you all have an excellent day.